Hello, everybody. My name is Mirko Novakovic. I am co-founder and CEO of Dash Zero, and welcome to Code Red. Code, because we are talking about code, and Red stands for requests, errors, and duration, the core metrics of observability. On this podcast, you will hear from leaders around our industry about what they are building, what's next in observability, and what you can do today to avoid your next outage. Today, my guest is Spiros Economakis. Spiros is founder and CEO of NOFire AI, a platform using Causal and Agentic AI to predict and prevent production failures before they happen. He's a longtime engineering leader, author of Argo CD in practice, and an advisor to global SaaS teams. Exciting to have you here, Spiros.
Happy to be here, Mirko.
I always start with my question, what's your biggest Code Red moment? And I already saw on the website, by the way, you had the pina colada accident or something. So tell me about that.
Yeah, exactly. So, one of the moments, that shaped, how I think about reliability was what we now call the pina colada incident with my, ex-teammates. The whole team was at an offsite. I had just came back, from a parental leave. I had a newborn, and I was the only one awake and on call that day. And imagine that I was already lacking a couple of contexts, right? I was just came back. And there's a lot of recent changes. The system landscape, has evolved. So 15 minutes before, my on call really is gonna end, right? The US customers were started logging in, and the system started literally falling apart. The users weren't able to log in. We had a couple of concurrent logins, and the funny stuff it was that it took us about, I think, 1 or 2 weeks to figure out what is the real cause. And the fix for these 2 weeks was literally to fail over to the next DB healthy instance. So, calm down one of the instances, recover to the other one. And for like 10, 15 minutes, isn't everyone logging in, doing this consistently. This, just stayed me not as an outage, mostly because, very few people, they had, the real understanding of the problem back then. I was alone. I didn't know exactly what happened. And I had all the telemetry of the world. I had, traces, logs, metrics, dashboards, alerts which were triggering, but still it was hard for me, to understand what has changed, to understand the behavior of the system, and not only find it, even in a day. Right? It took like 1 2 weeks. So this is really one of the code red moments because you can imagine after this we had also to send root cause analysis to the customers, post-mortem. You know what happened after this when
Yeah.
everyone cannot log in.
So did you have the pina colada before or after the incident?
The guys were drinking pina colada. I was on the incident. That was the issue.
I get it. No, that's good. And was that one of the ideas why you founded NoFire AI or?
Yeah, exactly. This is actually, how we think that we should start, this and start tackling the problem.
I don't know the tool in more detail, so we should talk about it. But the way I understand it, and you can correct me, is that it is a tool that works as an agent in your environment as a developer. So to check dependency, reliability issues, etc., before you actually merge and deploy the code, right? So essentially,
Right.
not getting to production, then root cause analysis, but do the investigation before you actually do the mistake, the change, and then prevent problems. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct. It's the full life cycle, right? This is what we're trying to tackle, right? Because what we believe is, the reliability starts when you really write the code, actually. Yeah, not when an incident forces you to look for answers, right? And I think this is where the landscape is changing too. Because if you see, right now with advancements of AI, what happens, right? Today we see faster, than we understand. And not only AI right now helps us, create code quickly, very fast, easily, right? But the connection right now between a change and how a production system behaves is not that strong as before, right? We still are kind of owners, reviewers, let's call it, but the speed of creation has outpaced the speed of reasoning right now. So, and when that happens, this is how I call, the ownership triangle. The ownership starts to drift. So responsibility, control, and knowledge fall out of sync, right? Because we deliver faster, but in practice, we don't understand. So are we accountable for something we don't fully understand, or we cannot even see, right? That's that's how small changes right now can affect, 5 other services without anyone noticing. And that's why we will not fire to this shift left reliability, right? Which what we discuss.
Yeah, actually, this morning I read a comment on LinkedIn. I think I read it, and somebody said, I don't care if you generate all your code with AI unless you understand it, right?
Yes, yes, that exactly, exact. I saw the same comment, and it's true, right? It's about ownership. You still have the ownership. You should still have, the ownership of this, but how we can also influence the coding agents to do better job, right? To do better job, having the context of the reliability.
So how does it work? Is it an MCP server or what, how do you integrate? So walk us through it.
It's this agent to agent approach. Right? It's an MCP server, right? Which, of course, we integrate with your system. We discover all the dependencies. We understand all the changes, the drifts, the golden signals, how each service is connected to the other, and what is the cause and effect relationships. Through that time, so you can reconstruct what happened also, yesterday or other days. And this actually gets all the context from the coding agent without really having access to your code, but getting the most useful information of what is the change, what exactly touches, right? And do a reason based on different kind of aspects. The knowledge we build consistently in a real-time way, right? What I told you from your infrastructure, Kubernetes, AWS, it doesn't matter. From your observability, start getting information about, at this moment, what is happening, or there are too many deployments. What is the stage, of these kind of services which you're gonna interact. So we predict, the cascade effects. If you have past incidents, identify that this same change, has been applied again in a past incident, so you should avoid doing this. So right now there is a agent to agent approach of, the whatever coding agents uses a NOFire reliability knowledge to do the right thing. It doesn't matter if you are just, an engineer who is writing code, or if you are a SRE who is creating alerts, because you can get the information. Is this alerts which I'm trying overlapping, right? Or do they SLO driven? Do I have alerts which are not useful, are false positives, or they have too many things which are the same? So you can even influence, how you write alerts, how you create infrastructure, how you do coding. So there's a couple of ways.
Okay, and where is it integrated? Is it a GitHub action that's triggered when you commit code, or is it something you manually trigger in your cursor or Claude Code and then ask for?
It's both, right? It's both. It's actually when you do have this, like the cursor or the cloud code agent, whatever we call it right now, who influences, in the workflow. So it changes the workflow we had before and changes to be more reliable because you get the reliability in production context. And you have also, during the pull request, where you get the right information back as a team to understand this is the change, this is what it touches, this is what affects, this is what is missing, and this is the current behavior of the production. Right? And gives you like a score analysis of go right now or no go signals with some kind of scoring, right?
How do you do the scoring?
That's the secret sauce, Mirko.
No, but what is the result? So it's a score between 0 and 100, and you say if you
0 to
get
10.
below 70, 0 to 10, and if you go
0 to
below a
10.
number, then it's risky,
Yeah,
or what? How does
yeah,
it
yeah,
work?
yeah, yeah. 0 to 10. Yeah, it's 0 to 10, and just tells you that, if you are under some kind of certain threshold based on the production behavior, of course, always, right? You are okay to go, or there's no many things happening at this moment, and this changes a lot of stuff in parallel. So be careful about this change, or include X people from other services, for example, right?
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. I wanted to ask, NoFire combines Causal AI and Agentic AI. Can you give us a little bit of a perspective? What's the difference between Causal AI and Agentic AI, and where and why you're using both?
Yeah, from my experience, all these years, because I was practitioner or I was leading teams for a really long time. On call teams rarely struggle, because they don't have enough data, right? They struggle, as we see, with the latest advancements because they don't have the full context, right? The way to understand what's actually happening underneath all these signals, changes, drifts, telemetry, whatever. And for years, if you think about the reliability, automation was about built on predefined ragbox that if this happens, something is going to be triggered, it's going to be fixed automatically. But it was very static, right? It was fast but brittle, and it only worked for scenarios we have already predicted, right? So what we use causal AI because causal reasoning changes the starting point, instead of counting spikes, right, or start looking at how events influence one another, what trigger first, what it set the motion, how the behavior eventually reaches to the user. Think about like that's kind of a senior SRE will try to reconstruct, when there is an incident or when there is a problem, right? So the causal gives you the starting point of where actually you're gonna start digging, not just going through, all the surface. And agentic AI builds on top of that structure. Why? Because right now it's the dynamic way. It's not anymore static, as we discussed earlier, right? It can reason through the situation, adapt its thinking, pull the right evidence with the fragmented tooling we have out there, and not only, start convert this in a meaningful part of the problem instead of changing, every alert. So, but to be honest here, right, just put data, and you have seen this, you have also product in the zero, right? Just pushing the data in AI cannot really reason, right? Just running raw logs or looping on LLM 20 times and all this stuff. That approach, first of all, it can be really slow that to go through the surface, super expensive, especially with the tokens pricing and the foundation models. And I would say sometimes it's also really wrong, right? So if the AI doesn't understand the behavior of the system, which is the causal AI, right, how all these are things connected, then we are actually just guessing. So that's why we did this. The combination matters because you feed the agentic AI, right, with a real representation of how the system behaves, and it can reason right now more accurately, more efficiently, right? Because starts through the whole surface. Because right now, that this change has propagated, or there was a temporal change, or there was a deployment which triggered other things, like a temporal or new service added. All these are important because this is how, right now you combine the dynamic way of understanding what problem we are getting, the causal precision of the things are connected, and just trying to reason better and faster and much more accurate right now, right? That's why we believe, and we see also in practice, from the customers we have right now that it's very accurate and very efficient so far.
And you're talking about context and dependencies. So you are having integrations into different tools, I assume. So you integrate with observability tools, etc., to get data, and then you have to derive. You kind of have to derive the dependencies from that data. Or how do you do that?
Actually, there are two ways, right? The way we use actually have an agent which is running in your cluster, right, in
Oh,
Kubernetes cluster, and it doesn't use eBPF in this case, where deciphers all the dependencies between the different kinds of services, and not only that you don't need OpenTelemetry in this case, like you just need the agent to just decipher all the information without eBPF. From the rest of the tool, right? Let's say that we integrate AWS, you get more dependencies, but you can connect them right now because you know that is an external dependency, right? So you decipher that and reconstruct the graph through the agent, right? So you have the whole system picture right now. And based on this, right, we start creating what I told you, the knowledge of how the system behaves, plus getting information from that telemetry data to understand more behavioral fix in terms of what is the performance or the latency, the golden signal aspects, which combine this knowledge. So it's not directly integration with observability stack only, right? Because it's fragmented, the data are not correct. The one vendor uses a different thing, the other vendor uses a different thing. So it's very hard sometimes to reconstruct the graph directly from the observability.
no, that's totally understandable. But most of the SRE agents, if you look at them, they mostly do it just with integrations. So you have your own agent running on the infrastructure,
Yeah.
using eBPF to understand the system dependencies.
No, not using BPF actually. We are using DNS in this case,
Oh,
to identify the dependencies. So it's real, it's not there's no intrusion here in your system, right? We are not the admin capabilities on your BPF. We just decipher all the information through the DNS and can support everything, right? The Kubernetes core DNS, bind DNS, everything what is which you can support. So you decipher the information from there versus just doing eBPF with admin capabilities in the kernel and other stuff.
well, that's interesting. And it works only with Kubernetes then.
Yes, but while you add more integrations or you give the right DNS, you can decipher more, right? Because think about, I have a service which calls an RDS, right? Instance somewhere. This is an external dependency, and you can see that this is an external dependency. So when you do the integration, you can get rich metadata from AWS. Oh, I know that this RDS has more nodes underneath, for example, right?
No, makes sense. So you create this dependency graph of services based on DNS information that your agent grabs from the system. And now you integrate, for example, with the Datadog service, and now you can map that information back to the graph and you understand dependencies, drifts, etc. You probably also store configuration data, or how do you understand drifts in configuration, etc.? You have history.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's mostly events, right? We don't store configuration per se, the value, but the drifts of the change. This value has changed. This has actually,
Ah, okay.
this is the storage, for example, the persistent volume claim has changed, for example, or other things like that.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's also more efficient, right? I remember back when I was still at Instana, when we designed the system, we had this dynamic graph, which also was a dependency graph between services, but also dependencies between the infrastructure, right? We had
Exactly.
dependencies like thing is running on a server inside of
Yes.
a pod calling a service. And we also had this idea of storing only changes, right? We stored changes, whatever happened, so that we could basically go back and back and forth in time
Yes,
and see
exactly.
what happened. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can get that's the causality, which is the game, right? You get the structural changes, the temporal changes. You can get all the changes through the time, right? Configuration changes. What exactly has been triggered? So of course, the big, from Instana, it's a big data problem, right? You need to store thousands of data, especially in large infrastructures, right, and complex environments. But this is what gives you also, and increases also, the accuracy, right? It's not only that you have some information from the observability stack, which is a very hard problem sometimes because it's very hard to identify. Grafana is different, Datadog is different, Splunk is different. Everyone is different in terms of how they have a data modeling. So it's very hard to reconstruct a graph from there, right? And not only, it's very hard to identify also the drifts we are discussing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do you see your tool in this whole chain? I mean, you have the coding agents on the one side, you have the observability vendors on the other side. You are kind of in the middle, right? In between coding and observability. So how do you see that landscape evolving for observability, for your category, coding agents?
We hear this a lot, lately, right? In conferences, on AWS reInvent recently, there was a lot of discussions about is observability, slowly becoming the data layer than the reasoning layer? Are the dashboards going away? What is happening, with all this drift? And honestly, I don't believe that observability is going away. Right? It still is going to be fundamental. It's still you need to have the telemetry. But teams, everyone right now, they're trying, and the customers, they are trying, to judge and debate, are we collecting too much data and we are learning too little from it, right? So you see right now also the other, the other kind of, there's the AI, there's also the bring your own cloud right now story about, okay, I can have the telemetry on my cloud, I have cheaper storage, because the volume and cost have grown faster than the value team, than the value teams extracts from it. So there's different kind of advancements here, but even if we will solve, the data problem, there are other problems here, understanding what we discussed a few minutes before. So where I see the things are going, I think is a layered model which I have in mind. Observability still becomes to be the data layer, right? And there is also a layer which I call it the infrastructure layer, right? It's being about the efficiency, cost, control, and how you decrease the cost heavily, or you keep only the right data and information. And there is on top of that, right, the understanding layer. So you utilize some of this information which connects to the different kind of signal and does this connection relationships that are cause and effect to help teams, reason and understand what is actually happening. Now there is a fourth thing which includes all this stuff, right? Which includes I am the super vendor which does everything. But still, I don't think observability can keep up with the pace today in terms of costs. That's why people are trying to find different ways, right? So I don't think that it's going away. It won't be get replaced. It's going to be the foundation, but it's not going to be the center of gravity, right? I think we move more to understanding and prevention, and definitely it's not about collecting more telemetry, right? So my tool, I think it's on the understanding layer, I would say, which connects all this scattered information, right, to a cause and effect relationship to have better understanding. So we're actually on top, I would say, on the observability layer. We don't touch the efficiency and cost in this case.
It's a good question, right? We are discussing this internally also, and I'm thinking about it. What observability will be with AI, right? Yes, there is the option that observability becomes a data layer, right? I mean, obviously you need the data, right? You need the telemetry somewhere. You need to store not maybe everything, maybe you can do it more intelligently, but you need to store the logs, spans, metrics, events somewhere. And you need to be very efficient in querying them because even the LLMs and the agents need to query the data and understand the data, right? So you need that query database layer very efficiently and scalable. And then the question is, what becomes the UI, right? Is the UI or the user interface an agent or multiple agents? Could be an SRE agent for troubleshooting, could be a tool like yours for understanding the situation before you actually push code into production. So that's a good question, right? It's really interesting to see how this space will evolve and what's the user interface, right? Is it Cursor? Is it Slack? Is it an own UI? What is it, right?
Exactly. We debate, we do the same with, questions internally too, right? As you said, I would say the one thing which we see definitely is, the UI for doing queries, query language things, or for creating dashboards. I think definitely we will see the next few years is going away, right? Because right now, if you think about it, connecting all these scattered tools, right now you can create ad hoc dashboards, not only from my Datadog or from my Prometheus or from my, specific telemetry and observability vendor I use, but from everything in an ad hoc way, right? So give me the dashboard, for this and this, including all the tools I have and the different services. So I think we see this shift already, right? The people, they cannot keep up on learning more query languages, and they cannot keep up creating more and more dashboards to understand. So they want to understand fast and very easy, in a very natural language way, to get something back, right? So definitely that's something is changing. What we haven't tackled yet, I think it's also something which is interesting, from your side, is what you said. Is it the data layer, the observability? Is it something else? Do you keep only specific information, right? The insights only? What is it? That's something which is interesting, fascinating, actually.
Yeah, it's also interesting to see how the observability validators will react to it, right? I mean, they could close a lot of the data to those agents, right? I mean, you could do rate limits because you say, hey, why would a agent query
Exactly.
all my data and create cost for me, and then the value is in their tool. So I can see vendors at least rate limiting or putting limits on the APIs, MCP server, so that essentially the user have to be in the observability tool because that's the only place where you can really get access to the data, right? So I think it will be interesting to see how this will evolve. And if those vendors like you then start building their own data layer, right? Because you say, hey, I have to own the data, right? So I'm building it. So I can see both sides, right? I think it will kind of emerge into the same category. I think finally you will have to get some of the data because you cannot be dependent on external data only. And on the other hand, I think vendors like us, we have to create the agents because we cannot give that space to external agent vendors and leave that to them, right? So I mean, that's why we released our Agent Zero platform with SRE agents, with dashboarding creation agents. But it will be an interesting dynamics in the market, and both categories will have a market, I think, right?
Yeah, and that's right. And there are different approaches by different vendors, right? There is the approach you have shared about the big tent, vision of Grafana, right? Everyone comes here, integrate, and everyone is going to benefit from this. That's a different approach from Grafana, right? Everyone can sell, everyone can be part of the platform. We are not limiting, and so definitely maybe this is going to change. Prices for LLMs and tokens are going to go higher. That's something we will see for sure the next couple of months, I believe, in the couple next of years. So you need to be also efficient, right, from that standpoint. So you need to start thinking cleverly. What do you do there? You get this access faster only by specific information versus everything.
Yeah, today you have multiple integration, I saw, right, to multiple tools. So in your customer base, what do you see? Do people have multiple tools or is it only one? So how does it look like? Is it still pretty scattered or?
Everyone has a willing. I want to go to the unified observability. Right? Everyone has a willing. Very few literally actually doing, right? So what we see is, every companies, and especially large enterprises, they have, in their backs acquisitions, new teams, came in. So lots of the tools are, still very, very scattered, and very little effort to go and unify them, right? And there are multiple ways to do this. The one is that, okay, let's put everything to the vendor, right? But they are start thinking, if I do this, the cost is gonna explode. So let's see what is the alternative, right? Okay, I'm gonna do an open source running this in my in my data center or my infrastructure, and try to maintain the data retention, all these things which you can be cleverly do to save costs with S3 budgets and other stuff. But it takes effort and time, and priorities are like, I want to ship, right? With AI, everyone is in the ship mode. I want to ship more. I want to ship more. I want to ship more. So very few start investing right now to unifying. But we have a customer right now with literally like 11 tools, uh, from different kind of things, like, from MongoDB Atlas, from Slack, Slack data, Splunk, Elasticsearch, scattered logs here and there, different kind of log vendors, one for metrics, one for logs. There's many, many weird things happening here. There is a willing, I think, we are not there yet, for the people to go and do it. And the other thing is what we see heavily right now is the adoption of OpenTelemetry. Probably you have seen this too, I suppose. Seems that OpenTelemetry finally, started being like the number one to go, but definitely has its own challenges to scale, which we see also with the customers. It's not instrumented correctly, it's not configured correctly. Many, many things we can go wrong.
No, absolutely. But why do you think people are not consolidating? I always ask myself the question. I mean, if you have 11 tools, different tools, it's not that hard to consolidate, right? And it makes so much sense to have the data in a single source, right, where you can also create better context. So I'm always trying to understand, why are people, is that more like the developers and SREs liking a tool, don't want to switch because they're used to it? Or because, I mean, with OpenTelemetry, it's easy to find a common language, and it's also kind of easy to consolidate. Yes, there are dashboards, alerts that you have to migrate, but it's not like a rocket science project, right? So I'm asking myself, why are they spending so much money into different tools? And also, why do they not want everything in one consolidated view, which in my point of view, makes sense?
Till the time, and I'm telling you by personal experience, your CFO come and tells you, why do you have all these 4 5 things? It's the same observability tool which are using for different aspects. We need to consolidate. Let's find a better deal. If it won't happen, I think a problem for your CFO. It won't be also the pressure to the teams. We need to consolidate faster, right? Uh, I don't see this coming yet, at least. Lots of people there in, okay, let's lead with this because it has too much effort to migrate from one vendor to another one. I have a very close friend who's doing a migration right now from one vendor to another one. It's like 7 months project to move everything, alerts, metrics, dashboards, everything. So it takes a lot of time, and there are other priorities which they need to prioritize, right, in parallel. So if the CFO won't come and tell you we're spending too much on many of these things, and you are not a budget line item, I'm telling you, I have seen this in practice. We did this in my previous company. We moved to unified observability for exactly this reason. And so we will see it, I suppose, because lots of costs are going up right now. Everyone is using AI. Tokens are consumed in a very high way. So people, they were start thinking, why we're spending too much here, too much here. So I think the consolidation will come. Is there a way to make it less painful? I think that probably that's the answer. How we can make it less painful to go from one to another one.
And I mean, using your tool is kind of a way of doing it, right? Because you could start putting your understanding layer on top of it,
Yes.
connecting 5 different tools. And it doesn't matter for you if you consolidate, it's still the same user interface to the user, right? Because
Yes.
your user interface doesn't change. Is that correct?
Exactly, Mirko, right? So you consolidate everything under one. So the consolidation happens without pain at this moment, though the costs for the other vendors are still there. So you still have to fight in some cases, like, okay, I have also on top of layer, and you have 10 other observabilities. We should consolidate under one thing or two things maximum. Try to find the best. But it needs to become a problem. It needs to become a budget problem. If you are not in this budget red line, uh, people or teams, they have it in the bucket list, but it's, I would say, low in the priority.
Yeah. So how do you, I mean, you're kind of defining a new category, right? In this space. How do you find your users? I mean, you're not an AI SRE agent. That's a category right now that's new, right? You're not an observability vendor. You're kind of somewhere in between. So what's your perfect user and how do they find you?
Yeah. Right now, there's a lot of content which is happening. There's a lot of events we are going. There's a lot of cold reach outs, just to be honest, because, I'm in the space uh, for a really long time, writing different kind of reliability things. I have met a lot of people. There's a good network here. So things have started working right now. But I think when people see the prevention and, understand how the system works and that the predictability right now is becoming solid, I don't have surprises, not many surprises anymore. This, changes the whole discussion immediately because they don't want, to have all these incidents every day. They don't want to be on these war rooms every day, even if you got this root cause analysis really fast, right? Still, you have to dig in the details. Still, you have to identify more things. So preventing early is something which everyone's trying to find at this moment. Till you start the discussion, right? Everyone is focusing very much on the RCA, which is very, very efficient. You can get really fast for those scattered tools, a lot of things. It's very useful. We also, have this foundation underneath. But in practice, the prevention, the predictability shifts the discussion immediately because people, they want less incidents. They want to maintain SLAs. They want to be safe when they release, right? And the team is also uh, more calm without stress that if I click this merge button or have a continuous deployment, everything's going to explode. So this gives to the, at least to the engineering leaders, where discussion of the guarantees and to discuss more and how this is happening. So the discussion are fast, very fast in the beginning. Also, showing the platform gives you also a different kind of boost because you see in practice how things can be actually better and safe and predictable.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking about the category, right? Because at the end, you are in the reliability kind of
Yes.
space, right? Which is also kind of a space of chaos engineering, if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Somehow. So yours is a little bit like that, right? Just different, as far as I understood, right? You don't have these chaos experiments. You take real data from production, and then you try to derive from that what would happen if you deploy that code or if something happens, right? So
Exactly.
it's not the same, but it's kind of very similar in the way you want to address the reliability problem, right?
Yeah, we call it, publicly and lately, a bit more. We call it like the full context embedded SRE, right? From the concept, right, that what we're doing when, when we're in a company, right? We get an SRE joining or embedding a team to influence the best practices, how the system behaves, make the people understand, and other things. But right now, you have it just under one integration, right? With the integration, you can just get all the information on your code while you are actually doing, the decision making, right? And give you prevention capabilities and understanding without having the SRE always close to you, right? So SRE is right focusing more how I can scale, the capacity planning, the cost optimization and things. Right now, the engineers get what they were missing all these years. So we call it full context embedded SRE, which can be in different kind of ways, like the pre-deploy, during the deploy, on runtime, or learning continuously from all this interaction and from all the different kind of data sources. So you get a continuous understanding, right? With this, I would say chaos engineering, I would say, is more static way, right? We have seen all these kind of create experiments, try to do the chaos engineering. We're doing also this in the previous companies, but still, if you feel about it, it's a game. It's still a game day, right? You're trying to tackle the problem just once a week or once per month. It depends on the team, right? It's still very retroactive versus proactive. It's still useful. You need chaos engineering just to to practice your team, uh, but it's not that you get the real thing right when you code, when you the real knowledge, the real understanding. But yeah, defining a category, you know how it goes, is very, it's a very hard thing. But we see a lot of, interest so far.
Absolutely. I can see it. The embedded SRE, full context. Full context is kind of a word that a lot of people use at the moment. And I think we all learned that agents only really work well when they have the full context, right? So that's something I think we all are learning on the way of building those agents. And we say the same, right? We also say, oh, you need full context. Otherwise, the results will not be that good. How do you see this space evolving? What do you think? What's your prediction for 26? We are almost end of 25. So how is this space evolving? What will happen to observability in this whole space? What do you think in 26?
Honestly, I think we will see advancements a lot in the efficiency and cost, right? Because vendors need to tackle this problem, and we will see, heavily trying to do clever things about what I keep, what I'm maintaining, and so on. So you can get the momentum they had, because there's a lot of discussion about this right now. So we'll see a lot of efficiency and cost. I think this is going to happen through AI. Honestly, it's not going to be just data retentions and clever policies and other stuff. I think it's going to be still through AI. And the other thing, I believe we will see a transformation in observability in the UI heavily. I think this is changing. This is going to change completely the next year, and we will see lots of companies start thinking also, what we do in terms of prevention. Right? They will try to do also to identify. I have all this data, how I can use them properly to prevent problems faster, earlier. So I think this is also something which we see rising up, the last couple of months. So yeah, 2026 is going to be fascinating in terms of cost. I believe UI, user experience, will change completely, and will slightly start touching the prevention also from other companies right now. This is what I believe is going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree on the user experience part, by the way. I think user experience with Agentic will change totally, right? We have to rethink the way we design software with agents first in mind, right? So absolutely. Yeah, Spiros,
Awesome.
that was fun talking to you, and looking forward to see how your tool evolves and your company grows.
Thanks a lot, Mirko. Thanks for the invite. It was a great discussion.
Thanks for listening. I'm always sharing new insights and insider knowledge about observability on LinkedIn. You can follow me there for more. The podcast is produced by DevZero. We make observability easy for every developer.